Baba Jaimal Singh and his quest for the secret of the sound current. Note to the reader. This work is but an excerpt of a larger book written by the late Kirpal Singh, originally entitled A Great Saint, Baba Jaimal Singh, His Life and Teachings. It was originally published in 1960 and carried a foreword by Radha Krishna Khanna. It has subsequently gone through several editions and been posted on various websites on the internet. Kirpal Singh didn't assign a copyright to his work and gave it freely to the public. Early years. It was in 1838 that Baba Jaimal Singh was born in the village of Guman in the Gurdaspur district of the Punjab to a family of pious Sikh cultivators. Guman was as any other village in the region. If it was distinguished in any way, it was by its having a shrine known as Dera Baba Namdev, in memory of the great sage Namdev, who, many centuries earlier, had spent his last days there. Legend holds that when the saint arrived and wished to pray inside the local temple, he was refused admission because he was an outcast. Undeterred, he went and sat down behind the back wall and was soon lost in samadhi. The Lord, unhappy at the insult offered to his disciple, turned the face of the temple toward the place where Namdev sat, and all the priests and Brahmins fell at his feet, asking for forgiveness. It is from that day that the local village is said to have taken the name of Guman, a Punjabi word signifying to turn around. The village folk visited the shrine to offer devotion, and many a wandering sadhu often came there to pay his homage to the great sage. Bhai Jodh Singh and Bibi Daya Kaur, the parents of Jaimal, were frequent visitors, and the latter, while there, would often pray for a saintly son. Great souls seldom come unannounced, and one night Bibi Daya Kaur was visited by the great Namdev in a dream, who told her that her prayers were granted, and 10 months later Jaimal was born amidst domestic festivity and rejoicing. The history of a saint is the history of a soul's pilgrimage. It is a story which, to be spiritually complete, covers innumerable years and countless lives. The final enlightenment may seem sudden, but its preparatory stages are long and arduous. Like Buddha and Jesus, Jaimal showed remarkable spiritual precocity from a very early age. When visiting the shrine of Baba Namdev with his parents, unlike other children of his age, he would sit calm and attentive, and even as a child of 3, he could repeat many of the verses he heard at spiritual discourses. The villagers wondered at his prodigiousness. He was soon nicknamed Balsad, or Child Saint, and his rural admirers pressed his parents to give him an opportunity for education. So when Jaimal was 5, he was put in the charge of Bhai Kem Das, a learned Vedantist who lived close by. In those times, education in India did not concern itself with training for a vocation. It was preeminently a mental and spiritual discipline based on the study of the scriptures. The young child displayed keen aptitude for it and soon mastered the Gurumukhi script. Within a year, he had already read carefully the Punj Granthi, or 5 basic Sikh scriptures, including the Japji, the Sukhmani Sahib, and Raho Ras. In another 6 months, he had the key passages of these spiritual treasures by heart, and by the age of 7, he had grown into an excellent pathi, or one who could recite the scriptures in a melodious way with professional mastery. The next year was spent in studying the Dasam Granth, the scriptures compiled by the last of the Sikh gurus. Jaimal showed great respect for his teacher, who was delighted with the boy's application and rapid progress. The two would spend long hours together, and the lad would hear Bhai Kem Das with great attention. His hunger for knowledge was insatiable, and the reading of scriptures only fired his imagination still further. One day, picking up the Japji, he began reciting the 20th stanza, and after finishing the recitation, turned to his teacher and asked, "Sir, what is the meaning of Naam, of which Nanak has said, 'When one's mind gets defiled by sin, it can be purified only by communion with the word, Naam, and of which all the other great ones have sung such praises in the rest of the Granth Sahib?'" Kem Das was touched by his pupil's questioning spirit and discrimination, but was unable to enlighten him on the subject as he himself was not conversant with the mystery of Naam. A day later, Bhai Jodh Singh, seeing that his son, now 8, was old enough to help him, went to his guru with an offering of a silver rupee and jaggery in traditional style. After laying it at his feet, he expressed his desire to have Jaimal released from his studies in order to tend his flock of goats. Kem Das raised no objection. "He is your son, and you may dispose of him as you consider best." But his young ward could not wish him farewell so easily. "Sir," he assured him, "I shall work for my father all day, but in the evening I shall come to you and continue the studies." Jaimal proved true to his word and kept unbroken his association with his learned teacher. Proud of his perseverance and piety, Kem Das initiated him soon after into the japa of Sohang, which he himself practiced. The boy would get up long before daybreak, have his bath, read the scriptures, and sit for meditation. He would then lead his goats into the fields. His young friends soon observed that while the goats grazed over the meadows, he did not hang around, idly looking on, but kept reading and reciting holy texts, and often sat down cross-legged for meditation. At sundown, he would return with his herd, have some milk and food, and then proceed to his guru. There he would sit attentively, learning how to read and interpret the scriptures. After he had mastered the Granth Sahib, he began, at the age of 9, the study of Hindi and of Hindu texts. Studies over, he would visit the shrine of Namdev and return home late at night. Often, while away in the evening, he would sit down and be lost in meditation, so much so that once he was away for the whole night while his parents searched frantically every part of the village in vain. This intense application did not go unrewarded, and the boy once told his teacher that he could see stars and moon within and glimpse inner light, the first spiritual experience of the mystic soul. Bhai Jodh Singh was far from satisfied with his eldest son's unworldly ways. However religious-minded a man may be, he is seldom happy to see his son turned a renunciate. Jaimal was growing up, but instead of showing any interest in family affairs, he was moving in the opposite direction. He not only spent a great deal of his time reading scriptures, practicing spiritual sadhana, and visiting his teacher, Bhai Kem Das, but also began passing long hours in the company of the sadhus and holy men who came to the village to pay homage to the shrine of Namdev. Wishing to curb his son's inordinate religious inclination, his father thought it best to send him away from Guman and its visiting sadhus. So at the age of 11 years and 8 months, Jaimal was sent off with his flock to the home of one of his 2 sisters, Bibi Tabo, who lived in the village of Sathiala. At his sister's, Jaimal continued his old schedule of religious practices and goat grazing. Many a month passed away in this uneventful manner. Then one day, while following his herd, he met a yogi who had just arrived at the village. Happy to find the company of the holy, he bowed in reverence, milked his goats, and offered the yogi a drink of milk. The man in saffron was touched by the lad's piety and began to question him. Jaimal told him of the scriptures he had read and the intense desire for enlightenment they had sparked in him. The yogi was very pleased by the account and offered to train him. He told him frankly that as regards the mystique of Naam, he knew little, but whatever he himself practiced, he would freely impart. So next morning, as instructed, Jaimal proceeded, without having eaten anything, to his newly discovered guide for initiation. The yogi was an adept in pranayama and instructed his young disciple into its secrets. Having found a spiritual guide, Jaimal was once again lost to the world. His old holy indifference to family ties and worldly affairs returned, if anything, with redoubled intensity. He would often sit for 3 hours at a stretch in meditation. The yogi, pleased by his devotion, stayed on in the village, and Jaimal was more often than not to be found in his company. These developments caused his sister much concern, and anxiety finally drove her to send word to her father to take the boy away. Bhai Jodh Singh soon arrived on the scene and ordered his son back home. The two set out homeward early next morning, but while they were on the point of leaving the village, Jaimal, his eyes moist with tears, begged his father to permit him to see the yogi for the last time and bid him farewell. His father agreed, and the boy, with an offering of fresh milk, hurried to his preceptor. There he sadly related how his father had arrived and of their intended departure that day. The yogi smiled, blessed him, and bade him be of good cheer. "Continue your sadhana at home as before," he said, "and all will be well. I myself shall see you there some day." At Guman, Jaimal revived his association with Bhai Kem Das and continued to greet visiting sadhus as of yore. He was now in his 14th year and continued with unmitigated zeal the practice of the sadhana he had learned, but he soon began to hunger for more. The yogic practices he had mastered failed to satisfy him, and on reading the Granth Sahib, he became convinced of a higher reality to be attained by different means. As he progressed on the path, he became progressively more detached from the world. He noted all the esoteric hints and references to the five-worded word, the Panch Shabd, to be found in the Sikh scriptures, and kept pondering over them, asking every new yogi or sadhu he met if he could explain them to him, but all in vain. At this stage of his search, he and his family suffered a sad bereavement. He was not yet 14 when his father fell ill and died. The family was grief-stricken, but Jaimal's spiritual discipline worked as a protective shield. Quoting from the scriptures, he comforted his mother and his two younger brothers and discouraged any weeping or wailing. If the soul was deathless, and if all was according to the Lord's will, then why any mourning? The Great Search. Had Jaimal's interest in spirituality been only a seed cast on rock or sand, or a sapling yet tender in its fibre, had it been no more than the mere curiosity or the spontaneous piety of a simple village lad, the passing away of his father would have rung the death knell of his quest. As the eldest male member of the family, the burden of domestic responsibilities fell on his shoulders, and perhaps more souls are lost to heaven by the sense of duty to earth than by downright sin and evil. But Jaimal's urge was a plant of tougher roots and stronger fibre. Undaunted and unmoved, he divided the outdoor duties among his brothers, kept up his old exacting routine, and in 6 months' time mastered the Yoga Vashishta and Vicha Sangre, two standard works of Hindu theology. There arrived in the village about this time a sadhu of the Udasi sect. As was his wont, Jaimal went to see him and inquired of him the meaning of the passages he had noted down from the Granth Sahib. The sadhu explained that he could initiate him, at least, into the mystery of the Gauranhad, or deep reverberating sound referred to in the Sikh scriptures, if not into that of the Panch Shabd. Jaimal, keen to learn whatever he could, offered himself as a disciple. But the Diwali festival was at hand, and his new teacher wanted to celebrate it at Amritsar. Reluctant to miss this opportunity, Jaimal went to his mother and begged her to allow him to join the sadhu and go forth on his quest for truth. But Bibi Daya had to see it to the welfare of the family and would not hear of her eldest son going away. She reminded him of his duties. "Your father is no more," she said, "and you must carry on in his place. If you are gone, what will become of us?" "I am not insensitive to what you say, my dear mother," replied her son, "but the Lord is above us, and he who sustains his creatures even on the rocks and in the sea will not forsake us in our need. Man's primary duty is to seek his Creator, and all other duties are secondary. Be not afraid, but be of good cheer, and let me proceed with your blessings." Deeply religious herself, Bibi Daya was touched by what Jaimal said with such conviction. Seeing his determination and being too fond of him to break his heart, she at last relented. "I know I cannot stop you, nor do I wish to do so. But if you must go, promise to return home when your quest is over." Giving his word of honor, Jaimal departed, and his mother and brothers bade him a tearful farewell. He had hardly entered his 15th year, and he was already embarked on a quest that was to carry him through many cities and was to involve him in great toil and travail. It was a time when the railroad was still unknown in India, 1853, let alone modern motorways and airways. The rich could, of course, ride on horses, but the humbler folk had to depend on the sturdiness of their own feet. Travel was difficult and arduous. The British had only recently conquered the Punjab, and stability was still to be established. The Great Mutiny was only half a decade away, but the people were growing restive, and the country was beginning to seethe with discontent. It was in such conditions that Jaimal set forth for Amritsar. 3 days after reaching there, he was initiated by the Udasi Sadhu in a local garden into the science of the Guru Anhad. Like his contemporary Sri Ramakrishna, 1836-1886, Jaimal Singh was destined to sit at the feet of many intermediary masters before meeting his true one. Like him, he was destined to learn many a sadhana and make rapid headway in each. And like him, he was destined not to be bound, like other yogis, to any of them, but to press ever forwards toward a higher and still higher goal. His early mastery of the Granth Sahib stood him in good stead. It worked as an infallible touchstone with which to test every new attainment and to know that his real goal lay still further ahead. Having practiced japa and pranayama and having delved into the ecstasy of the Guru Anhad, the quest for the secret of the five-worded word became Jaimal's overmastering passion. While at Amritsar, he did not fail to contact other yogis and sadhus, questioning them for the clues of that which he sought. Someone suggested that he might discover the object of his search at the feet of Baba Gulab Das, then residing at the village of Chatiala. The boy needed no further prompting, and not long after was seeking permission of Gulab Das's disciples to see their master. The request was granted, and he appeared before the revered sadhu. A lively discussion ensued, which, because of the newcomer's tender age, irritated some of the older disciples standing around. But Gulab Das assured them that Jaimal, if young in years, was mature in mind and was a true seeker of God. He tried to satisfy the boy as best as he could, explaining that Nam was no more than the sound vibrating in the pranas, initiating him still further into the secrets of the pranva or the pranic yoga. Jaimal, though ready to learn whatever he could, was not convinced by the sadhu's interpretation, which, as he pointed out to him, failed to explain A. The number 5 used time and again in the Granth Sahib in connection with the inner shabd, and B. the fact that the Sikh gurus repeatedly asserted that the path of Nam was distinct from other yogic forms, which could not give the highest liberation. From Chatiala, Jaimal's quest led him to Lahore. There were to be found Hindu sadhus and Muslim fakirs of all descriptions. The young Sikh lad sought their company at all hours and incessantly mingled with them. But try as he might, he could discover no clue. Finding himself in a great city, having trudged many a mile, with no money in his pocket, hardly ever certain of his next meal, he was not a little discomfited with his predicament. He lived in the hope of solving the secret which none could unravel for him. Weary of foot and heavy of heart, he set out for Nankana Sahib, the birthplace of Guru Nanak and a place of holy pilgrimage for the Sikhs. But at Nankana Sahib, Jaimal failed once again to find what he wanted. The ways of providence are mysterious. A seeker's way may be cluttered with countless obstacles which may almost seem to break his heart. Yet at the very moment when the spirit is on the brink of collapse, it whispers a word of encouragement and flashes a ray of hope, saving him from the giant despair and putting him on the road to New Jerusalem. And so the boy, now 15, met at Nankana Sahib Bhai Jodha Singh of the Namdari sect, who directed him to Baba Balak Singh of Hazro, a village beyond Attock in what later came to be known as the Northwestern Frontier Province. With undeterred resolution, Jaimal set out on the long journey. He first halted at Aminabad, whence he proceeded to Shah Dowlah. From Shah Dowlah, his journey took him across the Jhelum River to Tila Balnath, and thence to Rawalpindi. He spent a few days in each of these towns and never failed to get in touch with the fakirs and sadhus to be found there. Being not very far from Panja Sahib, the famous shrine marking one of Guru Nanak's most memorable miracles, one he proceeded there even if it laid somewhat off his route. There he sojourned for a while, enjoying the natural scenery and the clear water gushing from the sacred fount. He journeyed from there towards Attock and at last arrived at Hasro, his destination. He was very happy to meet the venerable Baba Balak Singh, who was impressed by the young visitor's keenness of mind and intensity of spiritual yearning. They passed some delightful days together, reading, reciting, and discussing the Granth Sahib. Balak Singh was a man of great wisdom and piety, but as far as spirituality was concerned, he, like Gulab Das, was only conversant with japa through prana, and knew little of the Panch Shabdi Naam spoken of by Kabir and the great Sikh gurus. However, he gave his young friend hope and directed him to Chikka, to a householder Sikh of great spiritual eminence. Jaimal arrived from Hasro in the village of Chikka and began inquiring for the man he sought. He seemed to find no clue till he met an old retired Sikh who asked the young stranger if he could assist him in any way. Jaimal related from where he had come and the object of his quest, and asked to be guided to the local saint. The old gentleman, who was himself the man he sought, kindly replied that no such saint lived in that village as far as he knew, but offered to do for him whatever little lay in his power. Jaimal's long and exacting search now at last began to yield some fruit. The householder Mahatma, at whose home he now found himself, gave him the first definite clues of what he sought and put him on the first rung of the spiritual ladder. Shortly after his arrival, the god-intoxicated boy received initiation. His earlier assumptions were confirmed, and he now knew it for certain that the path of Naam had little to do with other yogic practices. But after initiation, he pointed out that the scriptures spoke of the five-worded word, and he had been imparted only two. On hearing this, his host and preceptor related to him the story of his own initiation. It was many years ago that I went to Peshawar. There I met a great Mahatma and wished to be initiated by him. He accepted me as a disciple and unlocked to me the mystery of the first two shabds, bidding me to come back again as early as possible. I proceeded to my village and intended to return soon. But such are the traps of Maya that I was unable, due to some unexpected piece of business, to fulfill my wish. 2 months went by in this way, and when I did at last reach Peshawar, my master had passed away, taking with him the key to the remaining phases of the divine Naam. Jaimal had no choice. He had to be content with what he got. He stayed on with the Sikh Mahatma for some time, enjoying his hospitality and inspiring company, and sedulously cultivating the gift he had received. Then a day arrived when he bade his latest teacher a touching farewell and set forth for Peshawar to pursue his unfulfilled quest. He had the satisfaction of being put on the right road, but he was not the man to rest till he had attained his goal. At this ancient frontier city, he once again, like a keen huntsman, began seeking the trail of some man of full God-realization. But Peshawar was not the place where his quest was to be crowned with success, and his thirst satiated. While wandering among Pathans through its many streets, a Mastana Sikh, lost to the everyday world of rational behavior by divine intoxication, stopped him and accosted him with the words, "Why do you expend your labors in the north when your day is to dawn from the east?" Though he could extract nothing more from the strange counsellor, his advice drove home, and soon after Jaimal began retracing his steps to the Punjab. On reaching Rawalpindi, he decided to visit the famous Kashmir Valley and the popular hill resort of Murray. A lover of nature's beauties, he greatly enjoyed his hilly tour, and in Kashmir met many a sadhu. His sightseeing over, he finally turned homeward. With tatters on his back and barely any shoes on his feet or money in his pocket, he at last reached Guman to the great joy of his fond mother and his affectionate brothers. The family celebrated the homecoming in traditional style, offering thanksgiving to the Almighty, arranging scriptural recitations and the singing of hymns, distributing sweets among the neighbors, and offering food to the poor. Jaimal Singh, now 16, took up the family duties once more and gave himself up to the consolidation of what he had learned in his recent itinerary. Soon after his return, the Satyala yogi who had initiated him into pranayama 3 years earlier arrived, true to his parting promise, at Guman to see his young disciple. Jaimal Singh received him with reverence and humility, and his former teacher offered to instruct him in the other practices of traditional yoga. But the youth was no longer a child. His wide travels and the varied accompanying experiences had given him a new maturity. What had seemed desirable once no longer seemed of much value, for his contact with many a yogi had convinced him of one thing at least. The kriyas of hatha yoga might give strange physical and occult powers, but they could not bestow full inner peace and freedom. Every fresh day only strengthened his old conviction that the path of complete mukti or emancipation lay some other way, and all that he now sought was initiation into the mystique of the Panch Shabd. Time rolled on its mercury wheels, but Jaimal Singh was not the man to sit idle or be content with only the second best. Awake, arise, and stop not until the goal is reached, enjoined an ancient Vedic text, and his life was a living embodiment of this precept. Barely 8 months had elapsed since his return, when the urge to resume his quest for the holy Naam became too powerful to be resisted, and he began pressing his mother for permission to set out once more. "How can you expect me to let you go again? You were a child then, but now you are a grown-up man and understand your responsibilities." "Ah, mother, at my birth you prayed for a saintly son. Then why stop me now? How can you talk this way? Have I ever checked you in your religious inclinations? Surely you can pursue your devotional practices and spiritual disciplines while living at home." But Jaimal said, "How can godliness and worldliness go together? But you yourself have seen how others have encroached upon our lands after your father's death. We barely get enough to eat. And when you are gone, your brothers being so young, what will prevent them from forcibly occupying the rest? Let them take whatever they will. This world is not ours, and even if these lands are not taken away from us, we will have to leave them some day when our lifespan is over. We have only to sustain ourselves. What matters if all our property is lost? The Lord has given us sinewy arms, and with his grace we shall earn a respectable living. He whom nothing could dissuade while yet a child could not be deterred now, and Bibi Daya had no choice but to let him go. Thus, at the age of 16 years and 9 months, Jaimal Singh once again set out on his spiritual explorations. Having well-nigh exhausted the Punjab and the northwest, with the words of the Peshawar Sikh still reverberating in his ears, he bent his footsteps eastward. The times were insecure, and the British had not yet fully entrenched themselves in their new northern conquests. Night travel was, therefore, prohibited, and sentries were stationed at night on the chief highways to prevent any stray travellers. But Jaimal Singh was too eager to be thus restricted. He would spend the first half of the night resting and sleeping, and in the second, while the sentries were drowsing and dozing, continue his journey as quickly as possible. At Vairach, a village on the banks of the Bees not far from home, he met a sadhu named Kahan who was engaged in collecting bricks. "Good day, Holy One," said the youth. "What is it that keeps you so busy?" "Nothing, my son, nothing. I am only collecting material for your future dwelling," smiled Kahan, and once more got lost in his work. When others of the village would question him in like manner, he would reply with characteristic brevity, "A temple will rise here one day," and relapse into his usual silence. Jaimal Singh, not knowing where to go, directed his steps towards Hardware on the banks of the sacred Ganges, a favourite haunt of the holy. Travelling by night and by day, he footed the distance with commendable speed, and in 12 days reached the Ganges. He explored the ghats, steps to the river, of Hardwar, then a small town almost entirely populated by pandits and sadhus, hearing learned yogis, questioning them, and discussing his problems with them. From the main town, he travelled alongside the river, visiting all the sacred spots in the neighbourhood. At Tapoban, he heard of a very old sadhu of about 150 years who dwelt not far away in the heart of a thick jungle and possessed great powers, but seldom spoke to those who came to see him. Undaunted by the yogi's reported silence, Jaimal Singh wended his way into the forest and at last found the hermit's dwelling. The sadhu was busy with his spiritual practices and paid no heed to those that came to see him in order to be blessed by his sight. The evening drew near, and the sky and the branches overhead burst into life with the twitter of homing birds. All the visitors departed. The forest would soon be dark, and who could tell what wild creature might be prowling in the thick foliage awaiting its chance? Jaimal Singh alone stayed on. Night fell, and yet the yogi took no notice of him. He at last got up, walked to a swing hung from a nearby branch, and took his stand, resting his arms on its wooden seat. Hour after hour slipped by, but the ascetic stood on motionless, displaying no signs of fatigue. At last, darkness began to break and brought an end to his nightly feat of endurance. He left the swing, disappeared into the jungle, and returned after bathing. Jaimal had been keeping night-long vigil and had kept watching the unusual behavior of the strange man before him. When the sadhu came back after his bath, he at last showed some signs of being aware of his visitor's presence. He asked him who he was and what he wanted. The youth told his name, the place from whence he came, and added, "Holy One, for many years I have been in search of true spiritual enlightenment. I heard of your fame and your great powers, and have come as a supplicant to your door. I have watched with interest your strange practices, and if indeed they grant full liberation from inner restlessness, then pray instruct me into their secrets." The sadhu made no reply. He sat silent and closed his eyes, and opening them after a while, he answered, "My son, my discipline is difficult and bestows many powers. But as for inner spiritual freedom, I am afraid it has not secured me that." Jaimal Singh wished to question the yogi still further, but the latter became silent and receded from the world of outer consciousness into that of meditation. The sun ascended the heavens, and the day passed by. Some devotees came to have a glimpse of the famous yogi, bowed reverently at his feet, and leaving some food for Jaimal Singh and some offerings for the ascetic, departed as on the previous day. Once again the night fell, and once again the youth from Guman sat on. The yogi at last rose from his seat and spent the second night in the same manner as the first. When day broke, he went for his bath, and on returning beckoned Jaimal to his side. "My son, I cannot tell you much," he said, "but in my meditation I saw that the guru you seek dwells with his wife in Agra. He is indeed a great soul and discourses from the Granth Sahib. He shall unlock to you the treasures of the Panch Shabd. Proceed there, and I myself will follow as soon as I can to partake of his bounty." What a burden fell off Jaimal Singh's back! How many nights had he spent tossing and praying, wondering if God would ever grant his wishes? The stranger at Peshawar had given him hope, but his words were vague, and nothing was certain. Now at last a definite clue had been given to him, and success appeared within sight. The Lord was indeed kind, and did not ignore his humble servant's supplication. Refreshed in spirit and confident in mind, the youth, with a heart overflowing with inexpressible gratitude, bowed before the yogi now enwrapped in silence, and humbly took his leave. Notes on the Great Search. 1. It is related in Guru Nanak's life that the great sage was touring the region with his devoted disciples, Bala and Mardana. The party was feeling exceedingly thirsty, and there seemed to be no trace of water around. The sage directed his followers to Wali Kantari, a Muslim hermit who lived on the hillside by the side of a spring. The Wali, lost in his own pride, sent away the strangers empty-handed. When they returned again at their master's bidding, he scoffed. "If your guru is as great a man as you affirm, then can't he even quench your thirst?" When these words were related to Nanak, who stood at the foot of the hill below, he smiled and struck the rock with his open hand. Straightway, a crystal jet of water burst forth, and everyone drank to his fill. The wali was full of remorse, but it was too late now, and to his consternation he discovered that the spring that ran by his hut had suddenly dried up. The rock where the saint struck his hand still bears the imprint of his palm and fingers, and a clear stream of water sprouts from beneath. It is a great centre for Sikh pilgrimage. 2. In the past, it was a common practice with mystics to initiate their disciples by degrees into the inner science. After the sadhak had mastered one stage, he was acquainted with the mysteries of the next, and so on to the end. The method was not in itself objectionable, but it often led to results of the kind we have just noted. Jaimal Singh was to meet another case like that of the Chikka Mahatma a few years later at Delhi after being initiated by Swami Ji at Agra, when he met a Muslim fakir who too had suffered by the early death of his peer. To avoid such mishaps, masters of the Surat Shabd Yoga nowadays initiate their disciples directly into the mysteries of all the 5 inner planes that the soul has to traverse before it can merge with the Absolute. The consummation. Barely 10 days had elapsed before Jaimal Singh, passing through Hapur and the holy town of Mathura, arrived at the gates of Agra. It is a city famous since the days of the great Moguls, and many a tourist from far and near, from beyond the Atlantic and the Pacific, has had glimpses of its magnificent Taj Mahal and other historic monuments, as well as its sultry heat and dusty streets. But the youth from the Punjab had not come to view its historic splendor. He had no flair for its gorgeous and massive mausoleums, forts and palaces built by Akbar and his illustrious successors. What he sought was not the reminiscences of time, but the enlivening breath of the eternal. Instead of visiting the Taj Mahal, he explored the local shrines and temples in search of the boon that had been promised to him. But try as he might, his explorations seemed to lead nowhere. He could find no clue to the man he sought. Were his hopes baseless? Was the promise given him at Peshawar and confirmed in the heart of a forest on the banks of the sacred Ganges only a hoax and a delusion? Perhaps there had been error. Perhaps he was not yet ripe for the gift. Many thoughts crowded Jaimal Singh's mind as he sat contemplating on the banks of the Jamuna one morning after having bathed in its waters. While he sat this morning, 2 men approached him, discussing personal matters. At first he took scant notice of them, for many came daily for a dip in the sacred river. But then a word shot through his ears, and he was all attention. Yes, they were talking of a Swami Ji, a great sage, who often discoursed upon the Sikh scriptures at his home to a small audience. Jaimal Singh was on his feet. He accosted the strangers, inquired of them about the great man of whom they spoke, and begged to be conducted to his dwelling. As soon as the 2 devotees had finished bathing, they set out with Jaimal Singh for Puni Gali, where lived the great Swami Ji. When the 3 reached their destination, the master was speaking on the Japji, expounding its profound meaning and unearthing the spiritual treasures hidden in its lyrical ecstasy. There were only a few listeners, and Jaimal Singh slipped quietly into a corner. He heard the discourse with rapt attention, drinking in every word that fell from the lips of the saint. When the morning assembly was over, Swami Ji welcomed his new visitor and wished to be acquainted with the object of his visit. "I am in search of the gift of Naam and a saint who can bestow its blessing upon me," replied Jaimal Singh. "I heard of your greatness and have hastened to your door." "I am afraid you will find no saint here," smiled the radiant Swami Ji. "I am only a mere servant of the saints. Even the great Nanak regarded himself as no saint. Then how can a mere nothing like myself be of any consequence?" He then welcomed Jaimal once more, assuring him that he could stay there as long as he pleased, for all were free to share the bounty of the Sahib, the Lord above. Later that day, Swamiji spoke to Jaimal Singh again. Pleased with Jaimal's deep immersion in the Granth Sahib, he asked him to recite one of his favorite hymns. The youth began melodiously to chant the piece beginning, Karam Hovai Satguru Milai Sewa Surat Shabd Chitlai. By the grace of God, one can meet a master who puts him on the service of Surat Shabd Yoga. The recitation was moving. It was clear that the speaker had himself felt with deep intensity what he chanted. When it was over, Swamiji asked him if he understood the full meaning of the verses he had just rendered. "Oh, Holy One," came the answer. "If I had understood their true import, why then should I wander lost in this fashion?" And as he spoke these words and recalled his long journeys and the many vicissitudes he had, Jaimal Singh's eyes brimmed with tears and silently overflowed. Swamiji placed his hand lovingly on the youth's back and reassured him. "Be of good cheer," he said. "We are old comrades, and there is no cause for worry." Then, taking up the hymn that had been just recited, he expounded its spiritual meaning at length, weaving with subtlety the threads of personal effort and divine grace essential for the salvation of the human soul. Next morning, Swamiji resumed his discourse on the Japji. When it was over, he turned towards Jaimal Singh and suggested, "If you have any doubts or questions, why not clarify them now? Speak out your mind fully. I am only a humble servant of the Sahib, the Lord, and one may say anything to a servant, anything, high or low. Don't be afraid, but speak frankly. I would be only too happy to be of some assistance to you, for I regard this as my service to my Guru." Later that afternoon, Swamiji once again requested Jaimal to recite a hymn from the Sikh scriptures, and the Sikh youth began chanting, Utpat, Parlay, Shabde Hovai Shabde, He Fir Opat Hovai. Creation and dissolution are caused by Shabd, and the creation again comes into being by Shabd. The afternoon talk centered around this hymn, and the master took up at length the theme of Shabd or Naam, answering one after another Jaimal Singh's as yet unvoiced questions on the subject. He showed how the word or Naam was the primal cause of creation as well as of its dissolution, how it was at once the agent of the Almighty Absolute and itself the Absolute. Without its power, nothing was created, and only through contacting it could one reach back to one's heavenly home. When all had departed and Jaimal Singh was left alone with Swamiji, he drew closer and began to question the saint on the way to salvation. He was convinced that the Agra sage was a true saint, but the fact that he was not a Sikh and smoked the hookah caused him some uneasiness. But as Swamiji took up the subject of salvation and began revealing how Shabd was the only means of salvation, Mukti, how its contact could be given only by a Puran Sant, a perfect master, how man without Shabd could never fully escape the meshes of Maya, and how its practice and mastery lay within the reach of all regardless of their differences of sect and custom, Jaimal's doubts were dissipated, and he begged to be initiated. Swamiji then began to instruct him into the theory and practice of Surat Shabd Yoga, and when the instructions were over, asking the youth of 17 to sit down for meditation, he left the room. As soon as Jaimal Singh sat down for meditation, he got lost in samadhi. The night came and passed away, the day broke, but he continued motionless, lost in the inner bliss he had discovered. Another day saw itself swallowed by the night, and the night saw itself replaced by another day, and yet the youth sat lost to the world around him. When some 48 hours had thus gone by, Swamiji asked some of the disciples if they knew where the visitor from the Punjab had disappeared. "We saw him 2 days ago at the satsang," they said, "but we have not seen him since." Swamiji smiled and proceeded straight to the little room where he had left his latest disciple, and which none had entered for 2 days. He placed his hand on Jaimal Singh's head, and when the latter's soul returned to the normal physical consciousness, and he opened his eyes, he saw his guru beaming at him. "Do you, my boy, still doubt if your master be a true Sikh or not?" he asked with a twinkle in his eye. The lad wished to fall at his feet, but the long spell of samadhi had left his joints numb and still. Swamiji suggested that he rub his legs, and when Jaimal could move, he conducted him outside. There, he gave Jaimal a drink of milk with his own hands, and gazing at him fondly, he said, "You too shall do one day the work I carry on now. Our path is not concerned with outer forms and rituals, and each of us must live by the best traditions of the community in which the Lord has been pleased to place us." He then began commending the teachings of Guru Nanak and the Sikh gurus, and said that those who were their followers needed little instruction. "Always abide by the injunctions of the Granth Sahib," he continued. "Abstain from meat and drink. Never depend for your sustenance on others, but live by the labor of your own hands. Whatever you earn, share freely with the needy, and remember to serve the holy and the poor. And above all, never be proud of your own good deeds or critical of the actions of others, but know yourself to be in error, and never step outside the virtue of inner humility." Jaimal Singh heard with reverent attention his master's advice, and ever afterwards tried to model himself on the same. He devotedly attended the daily satsang and assisted in whatever manner lay within his reach. His past training had disciplined him well for his spiritual sadhana, and he would devote himself untiringly to bhajan. Under Swamiji's guidance, and with his phenomenal inner progress, new mysteries were daily revealed to him, the mysteries of which Nanak, Kabir, and Tulsi had so ecstatically sung. In those days, during the mid-50s of the 19th century, Swamiji did not have a large following. He had not yet begun giving public discourses, and confined his meetings to small private audiences at his home in Punigali after having discontinued his talks at the Mai Than Gurdwara. 7 or 8 of his disciples were especially devoted to him and constantly sought his company, and there was great affection and harmony. Every morning the master gave an inspiring talk, displaying before his listeners' eyes the spiritual treasures hidden in the Granth Sahib, or the writings of Kabir and other great saints. After the morning satsang, those present sat down for their meals. The food was cooked by Swamiji's wife, Srimati Narain Devi, who came subsequently to be addressed as Radhaji, as a mark of public respect and adoration, while Swamiji personally served the food to all with loving attention to each. In the afternoons and evenings, there would often be informal conversations and discussions, and at times regular discourses. A month and a half passed by in this way. Jaimal Singh was happy to live at the feet of his benevolent master. It was the year 1856, and a regiment of Indian sepoys, including several Sikhs, was about this time stationed at Agra. At the instance of Swamiji, Jaimal Singh joined up as a recruit. He would attend his morning parade, and duties over, would hasten to his guru's door. There he would attend the satsang, hear Swamiji, sit for meditation, and return to his quarters in the cantonment at night. His army colleagues would often ask him where he spent so much of his time. When he told them of the greatness of Swamiji, some of his Sikh friends wished to meet the illustrious saint, and one day, accompanied by 6 of them, Jaimal Singh set forth for Punigali. Swamiji was discoursing on some hymn from the Granth Sahib when the group from the cantonment arrived. Chacha Partap Singh good-humouredly remarked that the Punjab seemed to dominate the satsang that day. Swamiji turned to him and said, "The people of that land, above all others, have a right to the spiritual riches of which I speak. Who can ever do justice to the glory of Punjab that bore a soul like Nanak? He above all taught us that freedom does not lie in idol worship or in rituals, and while we in these parts are still lost in ceremony and idolatry, insensitive to the message of Kabir and Nanak, the souls of Punjab are free from such evils and need only a spark to set them ablaze. Mark my words, for they are worth remembering. The gift bestowed upon me by the Lord shall flower one day on the plains of the Punjab." Then, turning to his visitors, he welcomed them, entertained them as best as he could, bade their leader Jaimal Singh to be regular in his army duties, and when the time came for their departure, bade them farewell. The light army duties left Jaimal Singh ample time for meditation. If he had no night duty, he would get up at 2 a.m., bathe, and sit down for meditation. During the day, as soon as the parade and other normal duties were over, he would engage himself in like manner or hasten to the home of Swami Ji. He was known for not wasting a single moment on pastimes popular among his fellow soldiers. He visited Punigali with great regularity and often acted there as Swami Ji's pathi or reciter, and many of his friends, because of his impact, became his master's disciples. Life was peaceful and happy and was bearing steady fruit. But a day arrived when the regiment was ordered to move from Agra. Heavy of heart, Jaimal Singh met his master and sadly related the news. "Oh, sir," he said, "how I yearn to enjoy the blessings of satsang a little longer." Swami Ji smiled and replied, "Well, let us wait and watch for the will of the Sahib." Next day, fresh orders arrived cancelling the departure of the regiment. Jaimal Singh was making speedy inner headway. He often told Swami Ji of his various spiritual experiences, and his guru was pleased with his progress. Once, when he told him of his ready access to Daswan Dwar, the 10th gate, the third major stage of the mystic soul, but his inability to penetrate beyond it, Swami Ji exclaimed, "Ah, that is quite understandable. We have worked at this spiritual exploration together before, and in your last life you mastered up to the third stage. Hence your ease in progressing thus far and your subsequent difficulty." He, however, reassured his young disciple and encouraged him to keep up his effort. When the latter one day reported still higher ascent, Swami Ji was mightily pleased and declared enthusiastically, "Continue in this fashion, and you will soon be ready to help other souls to salvation. You have been born to help mankind, and between you and me is no real difference. I am not worthy of such honor. Oh, let me be humbly at your feet, far from the fangs of pride. Fear not. A true saint can never be proud. Oh, sir, keep me at your feet, the servant of the servants of saints. That is all I ask. You shall indeed have a saint service, saving humanity, bringing it to truth and spiritual liberation. What is the giving away of 1,000,000 cows to the saving of a single soul? You may do as you judge best, but as for myself, I know only too well my worthlessness and limitations." The 6 months for which the regiment's departure was postponed were over, and Jaimal Singh had to go. He took leave for the last 3 days and spent them in the company of his master. When at last the time for bidding farewell drew near, Jaimal Singh could bear it no longer. "My heart breaks at the thought of parting. If you so will, I can have my name struck from the army rolls." But Swami Ji would not hear of such a thing. "Build your love on the Shabd within. That is your real guru and is ever at your side. All else is transient and must be left behind. You must earn your living, for if you depend on the labor of others, you must pay for it with your mental peace, and your understanding will be clouded. If you have to work, then why leave the army?" Jaimal Singh had no choice but to bow before the superior wisdom of his master. At parting, Swami Ji spoke of the nature of sainthood and the conduct of saints. He related anecdotes of their great humility, and when bidding farewell said, "Your regiment is now leaving. If you ever meet a true seeker, put him on the inner path, but remember always that you are only a humble instrument of the saints." Tears filled the young soldier's eyes as he fell at the feet of his guru and bade him adieu. The soldier saint. From Agra, the regiment moved to Delhi. Jaimal Singh, deprived of his master's company, began looking for some spiritual seeker with whom he could associate. He soon discovered one Baba Karam Singh, also in the army, who was a great devotee of the Lord. He began visiting him frequently and would sit at his quarters enjoying the elder's company. When one day Baba Karam Singh asked Jaimal Singh what attracted him to his place, he very simply replied, "I come here because since my childhood I have loved sitting at the feet of the lovers of the Lord." Baba Karam Singh was delighted to find a fellow spirit, so young in years, and a lively discussion on spirituality ensued. It turned out that Baba Karam Singh, like Baba Balak Singh of Hazro, mistook the pranic rhythm for the principle of Naam sung of in the Granth Sahib. The young soldier, who had not yet attained his majority, began with great humility to correct his error. He quoted relevant passages from the Sikh scriptures to show that the divine Shabd was the prime energy activating everything, even prana, but was not to be identified with prana. He dwelt on the fact that all great exponents of Sant Mat, or the path of the masters, had clearly and unequivocally declared that in our times pranayama and other such practices could not bring inner emancipation. He then spoke of his great teacher at Agra and of his inspiring teachings, and helped Baba Karam Singh to get on to the right path to God. After the Great Rebellion of 1857, the regiment in which Jaimal Singh was employed was disbanded. He had not met his family for a long time and proceeded straight home. His mother's joy at seeing him again knew no bounds, but he was not destined to be with her for long. On receiving the news that a 24th Sikh regiment had been formed at Peshawar, he bade his family farewell and proceeded to join it. After some time in the northwest frontier province, the regiment was transferred in January 1858 to Ambala. In September of the following year, it was transferred to Sagar, a city on the banks of a large lake in central India. By now, Jaimal Singh's fellow soldiers had got used to his rigorous spiritual discipline. But during the days the regiment would be marching, they were surprised to find him excavate a small dugout in which he would then sit in a reclining posture, his back resting against the earthy embankment, and pass the entire night in meditation. While stationed at Saga, Jaimal Singh one night requested Swamiji in meditation that the regiment be transferred next to Agra so that he could have the benefit of sitting at his holy feet. A man of God realization can work strange miracles, being at one with the will of God, and a guru's love for a true disciple is so great that he denies him nothing. Jaimal Singh's prayer was granted, and next morning he casually observed to Bhagwan Singh, his mate and a devoted admirer, that as and when the regiment would be transferred, it would be moved to Agra. On that occasion, Bhagwan Singh took little notice of what was said, but when the news of its next stationing was received, the story of the prophetic soldier spread through the regiment like wildfire. The orders for moving to Agra had not yet been received when Jaimal Singh applied for annual leave. The leave was granted, but when he reported before departure, his superior informed him that he had to rejoin, not at Sagar, but at Agra. The sepoy was so overcome with the news that instead of going home, he went straight to Agra. Swamiji received him with great affection, and Radhaji especially prepared halwa to mark the occasion. The great guru regarded him as a Puran Gurumukh, a true disciple, and recited to him some of the mystical poems he had composed during Jaimal Singh's absence from Agra, and which were later collected by Rai Saligram Ji, another noted and distinguished disciple, along with many of his own compositions, in the volume entitled Sarbachan. One of the verses he read referred directly to his disciple. Ye dun hai dhur lokadhur ki koi pukre sant sepahi. This music streams from a transcendent plane within and is caught by a soldier saint. Jaimal Singh made the most of his time with the master. He attended the satsang regularly and often chanted the verses on which Swamiji later discoursed. Meanwhile, the 24th Sikh regiment moved into town, but he continued to stay at Punigali, for he still had some leave to his credit. One night, Swamiji asked him to carry a number of sheets and clothes and accompany him to a poor locality. There, he personally distributed to the needy, according to their wants, the gifts he had brought for them. The recipients were full of gratitude and enthusiastically thanked and blessed the magnanimous stranger. But Swamiji was not the man to draw praise for himself, even when it was his rightful due. "Oh," he exclaimed to those who flocked around him, "do not thus burden me with thanks. I am only an agent of my generous master. It is to him that all credit is due." When the nocturnal mission was over, the great teacher turned to his disciple and said, "Jaimal, my son, always serve the poor in this way, never claiming anything as your due." Jaimal Singh went back to duty when his annual holiday was over, but he made it a point not to miss any opportunity of visiting his master. He would often arrive at Punigali at noon and stay on till late in the evening. One day, lost in satsang and bhajan, he forgot completely that he was on duty at night. It was early in the morning that he reached the army quarters and went straight to his mate. "Have you completed your duty?" asked Bhagwan Singh. "Why, was I on duty last night?" ventured Jaimal Singh. "Oh, you think you're being funny? As if I did not see you going out dressed for duty last night." Jaimal Singh made no further reply. He was musing on the unfailing care of his master and wondering what exactly had happened. If he still had any doubts about the miracle, they were soon dispelled. The havildar above him, on meeting him shortly after, also referred to his night duty and that his attendance had been duly marked in the night register. As soon as he could get away, he hastened to Punigali and fell at his master's feet. "How little we erring mortals deserve the grace you shower on us," he exclaimed, and related the strange happenings of the preceding night. "I hope you have not spoken of them to any of your army friends." "Oh, sir, I was too dumbfounded to utter a word." "Excellent, excellent. Now keep it to yourself. And mark, if any such thing ever happens in the future, remember to restrain yourself and not make a public fuss about it." This miracle was to be repeated when a similar situation arose not long after. The year and a half that the 24th Sikh Regiment spent at Agra passed off like a happy dream. Before the regiment departed, Jaimal Singh spent 3 days with Swamiji. On the last day, when he had to bid farewell, he humbly fell at his master's feet. Swamiji raised him from his feet, pressed him fondly to himself, and observed, "There is no difference between us whatsoever, for we are alike permeated with the power of Nam." From Agra, the regiment proceeded to Peshawar, as is the wont in army life. The 24th Sikh Regiment kept moving from one cantonment to another every 2 or 3 years. Among various places at which it was stationed, the most important were Rawalpindi, Abbottabad, Myanmar near Lahore, and Jhansi. While at the last mentioned station, Jaimal Singh was promoted to the rank of a Naik, corporal. In October, 2 years later, he was once again on his way to Agra to spend the annual leave with his guru. Who can describe the beatitude to be experienced at the feet of a divine teacher? The time slipped by, and before he could even realize it, Jaimal Singh's day of parting arrived. He went to Swamiji for blessings and to bid him farewell. "This is going to be our last meeting," observed the master. "My mission on earth is almost over. I need hardly repeat that I have cast you in my own mould, and you are of my very essence." When Chanda Singh, who was also at Punigali at that time, heard that Swamiji intended to leave the world in a short while, he exclaimed, "What will become of us?" and begged him to leave someone behind to carry on his work in the Punjab. Swamiji smiled and replied, "Your prayers have already been granted by the Almighty, and Jaimal, whom I have already given authority for initiation, has been deputed for the task." Then, turning back to Jaimal, he said, "Put all seekers that come to you on the path of Nam, but see that you steer clear of sects and creeds. Ours is the path of Nanak and Kabir. Whosoever is fired by spiritual zeal, whether of this faith or of that, has a right to it. Carry on in all humility, and whatever you do, do it as a servant of the saints." He then turned to Radhaji and, placing his hand on Jaimal's back, declared, "He is indeed our Gurumukh son," and taking a saropa or headdress, he lovingly bestowed it as a parting gift to his apt and faithful disciple. This great love and honor was too much for the humble Gurumukh, and overwhelmed, his eyes were filled with tears. His heart was heavy as he left, thinking of the approaching end of his master's earthly sojourn and the difficult burden that was being placed on his shoulders. From Agra, Jaimal Singh returned to his regiment at Jhansi. The rest of his story as a soldier is simply told. It is unnecessary to enumerate the many places at which the 24th Sikh Regiment was stationed from time to time. Whatever happened, wherever he went, Jaimal Singh let nothing interrupt the routine of his spiritual sadhana. Like a lover in the frenzy of love, he was forever centered in the joy of the inner life. Even when his regiment was in action in the northwestern frontier during the Anglo-Afghan War in 1879, he would leave his quarters at night, go into the wilderness, dig a pit, and with his rifle tucked under his knees, get lost in meditation. Enemy snipers would often spot him, but seeing his radiant figure make out that he was no ordinary soldier but some great fakir, and leave him untouched. At times, when he arose from his sadhana, they would even bow before him in reverence. As Jaimal Singh, who had been 18 when he had first entered the army at Agra, grew into a mature man and passed from youth to middle age, he slowly but steadily won the hearts of all around him. At first, some of his companions might have sportively dismissed him as an orthodox non-entity who did not know the art of enjoying life, but was lost in the reading of scriptures and practicing tedious spiritual sadhana. But as the years passed by, they realized that they had among them no ordinary mortal. His prediction to Bhagwan Singh at Saga of their regiment's next posting got wide currency and won him many admirers. While stationed at Jamrud during the Afghan War, his mate Bhagwan Singh, who had gone with a convoy, suddenly fell ill and died. At the very moment his spirit was leaving its physical frame, Jaimal Singh, many miles away, abruptly exclaimed, "Wah wah nipat gai." Well, well, it is at last over. Inda Singh, who had joined the regiment at Jhansi and had developed an intimate attachment for his revered senior, becoming his first initiate, was sitting with him. He was not a little surprised by this dramatic outburst and asked his teacher what it meant. Jaimal Singh was reluctant to declare himself. "Why bother about that which does not concern you?" he said. But when Inda Singh persisted, he told him that Bhagwan Singh had passed away. The young soldier noted the time and date, and when the news of his colleague's death arrived, he found it to be correct. Such strange happenings were not infrequent where Jaimal Singh was concerned, and with the passage of time, he became an institution in the regiment. Everyone respected him, and even the English officers held him in great veneration, calling him Lord Bishop. All those spiritually inclined sought his company, and no less than those who suffered from some worldly affliction. Thus, Subadar Karak Singh, who had been married for many years without issue, begged him for the blessing of a child. Jaimal Singh observed that he was not destined to have a child, but when Karak Singh continued to press him, his prayer was granted. The child was born, but the happy father failed to give away in charity the sum of ours. 500, which Jaimal Singh had strictly enjoined him to distribute. Not long after, the Subadar fell seriously ill. Jaimal Singh was called, but he said that it was too late now and the evil was past any remedy. A few days later, Karak Singh passed away. Was it mere chance, or was it because of Jaimal Singh that the members of the 24th Sikh Regiment showed an extraordinary interest in spiritual matters? It is not an unusual phenomenon that the true holy men spread an aura of peace wherever they are, drawing the devotees of the Lord towards themselves and influencing those around them. This regiment became known for its religious inclinations, and many a sadhu would pay it a visit wherever it was stationed. Jaimal Singh was always invited whenever any sadhu paid a visit to the regimental centre or when any of its members went forth to meet them. When once some of the young Sikh soldiers had to be baptized as adults into their faith, he was unhesitatingly chosen to conduct the ceremony and gave an illuminating discourse on the inner spiritual significance of the ritual. His recitations from scriptures began gradually to be attended by more and more people, and in later years, Jaimal Singh, who by then had come to be popularly addressed as Babaji, Bhai Ji, or Sant Sepahi often discoursed briefly on their true import. His magnetic personality, his impeccable character, his spiritual mastery, and his growing fame gradually drew around him a small circle of very devoted followers from the regiment, men like Inder Singh, Bhagat Singh, Bhagwan Singh, etc., who became his earliest initiates. But Baba Jaimal Singh's military career was conspicuous not only for its rigid adherence to a high spiritual ideal, but also for its equally remarkable performance in the field of army duties. True to his master's behest, Jaimal Singh was extremely regular in his official routine. Nothing could keep him away from his work except, perhaps, his absorption in the divine, on which occasions Swamiji miraculously filled up the gap. He was known for his honesty and impartiality, and though a strict vegetarian himself, did not hesitate to have meat distributed to his fellows as duty-bound when once he was called upon to do so. Once an officer asserted that his vegetarianism was in all probability undermining his capacities as a soldier, and suggested that he should take to non-vegetarian food to develop more stamina and muscle. Jaimal Singh was unconvinced and challenged any meat-eating toughs to surpass him on the field. He was later requested to explain the grounds for his abstinence and gave a full discourse to the entire regiment, developing at length the reasons why meat should be avoided and exploding the popular myth that vegetarian food is in any way deficient in vitality. His service roll, covering 34 years of active service, proves the truth of his assertion. It records not a single instance of hospitalization. Like his great guru, Jaimal Singh was unassailable both in Swartha and Parmartha, worldliness and godliness. His exemplary regularity, sobriety and courage, his readiness to shoulder responsibilities, and his honest discharge of all his duties, for all his quietness and unobtrusiveness, did not go unnoticed. In January 1869, he was awarded a medal for the rank of a Naik corporal while at Jhansi. In Myanmar, on the same day, 3 years later, he became a Havildar, sergeant. And when the 24th Sikhs were at Multan from 1880 onward for 3 years, he received a second medal for loyal and meritorious service. He retired on the 15th of August, 1889, after full 34 years of faithful and creditable service. When he bade his regiment farewell, the hearts of all were heavy juniors, colleagues, and seniors, for they lost in him not just a steady, hard-working comrade, but a friend, a teacher. He taught Gurumukhi to the officers, and what is far rarer, an unfailing and inspiring moral and spiritual guide. The accounts of Babaji left by his army colleagues and others are of a piece with the rest of his life and character. Reading through them, we learn of a man who, while lost in the divine mysteries, was yet not lost to the world. A fellow soldier who happened to be placed under him while he was a Havildar was surprised that in all the 3 years they were together, he did not once notice or hear of his being out of temper. He was always sweet-spoken and refrained from harshness and vulgarities. All his life he remained a strict vegetarian and an equally strict teetotaler. And to these we may add his rigid brahmacharya, chastity, for he remained a celibate all his years. Wedded to devotion to God, he never experienced the urge to marry, and stoutly resisted any attempt to cajole him into matrimony. When his youngest brother, Jiwan Singh, also entered the army and expressed his desire to marry, Jaimal Singh did not object, but only said, "Why enter into this web when our family is not destined to continue?" Jiwan Singh was married, and a year later a son was born who died shortly, followed by his mother. Dan Singh, the second brother who managed the farm, also had no issue, and Jaimal's prediction was thus fulfilled. Other qualities that marked Jaimal Singh out of the general run of men included an inexhaustible capacity for service, charity, and generosity. Like Swamiji, he often distributed clothes and other necessities to the needy and the wretched. He had no enemies and looked upon all as his friends. His love, however, was especially directed to the poor, and even more so to sadhus and devotees of the Lord. While others were idling or busy with sport, he sought out the company of such devotees, ministering to their needs or discussing spiritual problems. Neither in his army life nor even afterwards did he distinguish between creed and creed, but treated all Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, or Hindus on an equal footing. While ever ready to help materially or spiritually, he always avoided the limelight. Even as a child, he had been known for his modesty, his shyness being sometimes made a subject of ridicule. If he met sadhus, he contented himself with listening to what they said, and he rarely contradicted or criticized. If he met a genuine seeker, he was ready enough to discuss and explain, but he attributed whatever he knew not to any virtue in himself, but to the grace of his peerless master. His dress and appearance were as simple yet elegant as the man himself. Of medium height, some 5 feet and 6 inches, he was sturdily built. He had a knotty protrusion on his forehead above the right eye and a lotus mark, padam rekha, symbolic of true spirituality, on the sole of his right foot. He had fine features, wheatish complexion, and a glowing face whose ruddy colour was set off by a rich, freely flowing beard which retained its lustrous blackness to the very end, except for a few straggling streaks of white. When not in army uniform, he wore a white turban in Jat style, a white muslin kurta, loose shirt, and tight-fitting pyjamas of the same colour. While in his quarters informally among his fellows, he would usually wrap a khadi sheet about himself, tucking it on the left side, cover his hair, which when unloosed fell to his waist, with a towel, and move about in karayon, wooden sandals, or juti, Indian shoes. He was simple in his habits and frugal in his needs. Milk was his favourite item of food, and he was particularly fond of goat's milk. He spent little upon himself, and his earnings were mostly spent in charity or in sending allowances to his brother. Note on the soldier saint. 1. What we cannot explain in terms of what we know, we normally term as a miracle. Thus, the first witnesses of locomotion looked upon what they saw as a wonder, yet today hardly anyone would take it as such. In like manner, he who has mastered the inner science knows that what people take as miracles are not miracles as such, but are based on the higher laws of creation, accessible only to the scientists of the spirit who have explored the mysteries of the inner path. The Torchbearer. Baba Jaimal Singh, on retiring as a government pensioner from the army, decided to visit the home of his incomparable master. Swami Ji had passed away in 1878, as he had himself foretold, but Baba Ji was greatly attached to his family and his disciples. So, in 1890, he took train for the old Mughal capital, and on reaching there, proceeded straight to Puni Gali. Radha Ji was overjoyed to see Swami Ji's beloved disciple once more, while Chacha Partap Singh, Swami Ji's youngest brother, was delighted and gave him a cordial welcome. Word was sent to Baba Garib Das, then apparently at Agra, and he hastened to meet the great soul from the Punjab. Who can describe the deep joy that was theirs as they greeted and embraced each other and remembered the great master, who, no longer in this physical plane, was yet spiritually ever with them? Who can fathom the feelings of such master spirits? The old spiritual comrades radiated love as they greeted each other, and to see them meet was itself a lesson in the truth that God is love. Radhaji brought forth a red turban and an asan, or prayer carpet, which Swami Ji had left with her before his passing away as a last gift to his Gurumukh disciple. Chacha Partap Singh then brought a gadi and begged Baba Ji to be seated. But he would not hear of it, and commenting, "I am only a dog of this house, blessed to be admitted within its walls," kept standing. Chacha Partap Singh protested and persisted, but to no avail. At last, Radhaji intervened and ended the controversy by saying, "Jaimal Singh is indeed a Katau, worthy son of Swami Ji, who has made the most of the capital entrusted to him. He has bestowed him with the lordship of Satlok, so why should he care for earthly gaddis?" When meals were over, Babaji insisted on washing the utensils. "This home for me is a temple, for it was here that I got enlightenment. My only ambition is to serve this house." But Radhaji would not hear of it. "You may do as you please some other day," she declared, "but today you must abide by what I say." Next day, accompanied by Chacha Partap Singh and Baba Garib Das, Baba Jaimal Singh Ji proceeded to Rai Saligram, a beloved disciple of Swami Ji, who had been entrusted after him with the work at Agra and carried on his discourses at Pipal Mandi, where he was popularly known as Hazur Maharaj. He rejoiced at the visit and received the honoured guest from Guman with respect and affection. The two embraced, after which Hazur Maharaj drew Babaji towards the gadi on which he had been sitting in order to seat him next to himself. But with characteristic humility, he declined the honour and seated himself on the floor. The third day, Hazur Maharaj presented Babaji with a rich silken robe embroidered with gold. He, however, would not hear of it. "What has a simple farmer like me to do with such precious fabrics? Khadi, hand-woven fabric, suits me better." "How can you say such things?" protested the host, "when Swami Ji has made you a king of spirituality and entrusted you with his mission in the Punjab?" Seeing that Babaji would not give way, he finally suggested, "Very well, if you will not accept this robe, at least do me the honour of putting it on once, after which I would keep it as a prized souvenir." On hearing this, Chacha Partap Singh declared that he had a prior right and should be allowed to have the dress after Baba Jaimal Singh had donned it. At last, Radhaji stepped in and interceded. How could Jaimal Singh resist any longer? Such love, such honour! What mortal could deserve it? It was all the grace of his master. With tears in his eyes, he took the robe from Radhaji's hands and placed it reverently on his head, reciting the verses from the Granth Sahib, beginning, "Mine Afghan, gun nahin koi. I am unworthy, and no virtue is in me." A week passed by in this fashion, and having paid his homage to the place where he had received spiritual illumination, Baba Jaimal Singh prepared to depart. He invited Baba Garib Das to join him, and the latter graciously accepted the invitation. The party set forth for the Punjab, and when they arrived at Guman, scriptural recitations and discourses were arranged in their honour. Jiwan Singh's marriage was at hand, and there was feasting and rejoicing. The villagers keenly enjoyed the talks given by the two spiritual friends, and the days rolled by till Baba Garib Das had to leave. Jaimal Singh accompanied him to the Bees railway station and bade him a touching farewell as he left by train. Side note, Babaji continued to be on very friendly terms with Swami Ji's disciples and with the members of his family. There was great mutual respect and esteem, and Babaji's visit to Murray in 1894 was made at the invitation of some Agra Satsangis. But after the passing away of Hazur Maharaj Rai Saligram Ji, things began to undergo a change. A move was made to bring all activities under the control of Pandit Brahm Shankar Misra, alias Maharaj Sahib, through the creation of a central administrative council at Soamibach. Babaji was nominated along with 9 others for the first panel of the council. The letter sent to Baba Jaimal Singh by Chacha Partap Singh from Allahabad on the occasion, dated the 4th of August 1902, nominating him as such, is on record. Babaji, however, was reluctant to join the same as he felt the changes that were about this time taking place among the Agra Satsangis were not in consonance with Swami Ji's teachings. He also objected to and opposed Maharaj Sahib's plan for building a magnificent samad in memory of Swami Ji, because he felt that so humble a spirit as his master would never have countenanced such a project. When he went to Agra about this time, he openly explained his point of view, but Maharaj Sahib was not to be dissuaded. Finding himself no longer well received and his words of no avail, he returned to Bees and decided to remain aloof from the activities of the council at Soamibach. During his military career, Baba Jaimal Singh, whenever he had any leave, spent part of it at Guman. Though detached from worldly ties, he was yet very fond of his mother. On one occasion, he was to tell a devoted disciple that in their past 3 lives, he and his mother had enjoyed the same relationship. On such occasions, when he came to his ancestral home, it was his wont not to waste time in needless gossip and idling, but to proceed to the banks of the Bees and sit hidden in the gullies that the wayward river had created by its freakish changes, of course, and continue lost in spiritual devotion for days, subsisting only on a few dry chapatis that he brought from home and hung on a kikar tree. At other times, when he was at home, he would walk down to Dera Baba Namdev and carry on his meditations there, or in a dugout in the courtyard of the family house. This house and dugout were preserved long after Babaji's death, and his successor, Hazur Baba Sawan Singh Ji Maharaj, would sometimes take his closest disciples to Guman and show them the spot where his great guru used to sit for meditation. In particular, he would point out the peg on the wall behind the dugout where Babaji would tie up his hair in order to ward off sleep during abhyasa. Just as his fellow soldiers learned in time to respect and revere Baba Jaimal Singh, in like manner the inhabitants of Guman came gradually to recognize his great spiritual stature. His early childhood devotion had already become a local legend, and whenever the Sant Sipahi came, the local folk flocked to see him, and his company was sought by young and old, whosoever was sly inclined. Mistry Elahi Baksh and Bhai Lena, who had been his boyhood friends, were the first to seek his spiritual guidance. He commended their zeal, but said that the time was not yet ripe for their instruction. Many years later, when he felt that the hour had come, he put them on the inner path, and they were among his earliest Guman disciples. After his retirement, Babaji, on coming to his native village, continued his old habit of going to Bees Riverside for his sadhana. The years immediately following the close of his army life were largely spent in this manner. Once, while at Amritsar with Hakim Nand Lal, he mentioned that he was in search of a quiet place in the wilderness where he could settle down and carry on his meditation. Lala Khazana Mal, a moneylender who was also present, suggested that such a place could be found between the villages of Vairach and Balsarai on the banks of Beas, where he carried on his business. Babaji, who had already been attached to the area, accepted the suggestion. This was the place where Kahan, a god-intoxicated man, met Babaji in his early life, saying he was preparing a place for him in the days to come. Meanwhile, Baba Chanda Singh, who too had received instructions at the feet of Swamiji, passed away. In his last moments, Bibi Ruko, a very devoted disciple, asked him what was to become of her. "Fear not, my child," replied the sage. "Another greater than myself shall take care of you." "Where shall I find him, sir?" asked Ruko. "Find him? No, you shall have no need, for he himself will seek you out." Shortly before Babaji came to settle down on the banks of the Bees, Bibi Ruko, who was then living at Vairach and was fairly well advanced spiritually, told the villagers that her protector was coming to live there. When Baba Jaimal Singh arrived, he found a small hut built out of straw and branches for him, a bare 8 feet by 8 feet, and he began living there. Soon after, Khazana Mal arrived, and hearing that Babaji had come, came to see him. He had the hut plastered with mud and a cave dug out. It was the year 1891, and Babaji gave himself up with redoubled zeal to his spiritual sadhana. He would enter the cave and stay in it for days on end, sometimes as long as a fortnight without any thought for food, wrapped in inner samadhi. Though Babaji shunned the public gaze, yet musk cannot be hidden in the dark. He might have no care for earthly name and fame, but name and fame fell to his share in spite of this. Fame of his spiritual greatness had already spread from Goman to the neighboring villages, and going for darshan to a holy man is an ancient institution in this land of the sages. Where there had been wilderness, people began appearing in ever-growing numbers and regular satsangs began to take place. How could Babaji turn away those who had come to his door? In all simplicity and humility, he taught them the spiritual message that he had received at the feet of Swamiji. Many a moneyed man begged him to be permitted to build puka quarters for him, but he, rich in his own humility, continued in his simple, austere ways. To undertake to write the biography of a saint is to attempt the impossible. If it is to do real justice to its subject, it must follow the inner movements that defy observation, analysis, and formulation. You may take up the life of a great artist, writer, soldier, or statesman, and if you are a man of deep understanding and imagination, you may reincarnate it in words giving a vivid picture of the psychological conflicts and resolutions involved. But the saints at one leap have passed from this world to another and have cast their tents in inaccessible realms. Few men have reached there, and those that have entered have been wrapped in silence. When the pen set to picturing this station, it broke in pieces and the page was torn. The study of the progress of the mystic soul is beyond the reach of ordinary mortals, and those that have been on the inner journey can only speak in metaphor and parable. For how else can the language of common humanity be compelled to express experiences for which it was never fashioned? The history, then, of a master soul, as fired by a restless zeal which moves from plane to plane, must remain an unwritten one. At best, it can only give the husk of outer events and happenings to suggest the unusual nature of the spiritual experiences they unfold. And once such a soul has attained full enlightenment and become one with the infinite, its history is no longer its own, but is the history of those that came under its spell and were liberated from worldly bondage. The story of Babaji's life after his great search had been crowned with success is the story not so much of his own development as of the many souls that benefited from him. Thus, Mian Chirag Din relates the story of his maternal grandfather, Mistri Elahi Baksh, of whom we have already spoken. Elahi, a childhood friend of Babaji, showed great interest in spiritual matters and would discuss them with him when he would come home on leave from his regiment. Once when Babaji, known in his village as Bai, was in Guman, Elahi saw him approaching in the company of a sadhu. A lively discussion was in progress, and when Elahi wished to know its theme, he was told that the sadhu insisted that Brahman was the highest of all heavens, in spite of the fact that Babaji assured him that there were higher realms. On hearing this, Elahi turned to the sadhu, and with solemn conviction said, "Revered sir, Baiji is absolutely right. There are indeed regions higher than those of which you know." This silenced the sadhu, and he went away. When the friends were left alone, Babaji thanked Elahi for his friendly intervention and added, "But it is strange that you never told me of your access to the inner spiritual realms. Whoever said I had access to them? But then, how could you speak with such conviction?" "Oh, Bai, I only know that a man of realization can never utter a falsehood. So how could I doubt what you said?" Babaji was so moved by his friend's spontaneous and deep-rooted faith that he told him, "I shall unlock to you treasures of which few ever dream and which fewer attain." He took him straight to a nearby pond and initiated him into the Surat Shabd Yoga on its bank. However, Elahi had yet to learn the value of the gift he had received. Greatly interested in spiritual questions, he continued the practices taught to him by Muslim fakirs and failed to attend to his friend's instructions. When Babaji came to Guman again, he sent for Elahi and asked him what he had done with the inner key that had been given to him. When Elahi told him that he had done nothing and even forgotten what he had been told, Babaji was displeased. "I give you the greatest riches that man can ever hope to have, and you treat them with such scant regard," he scolded and slapped him thrice in the face. As soon as his hands fell upon the repentant Elahi's face, his inner eye was opened, and his spirit rose to higher worlds. From that day onward, Elahi Baksh began devoting himself exclusively to the Surat Shabd Yoga, and would daily visit his peer or guru and bow in reverence before him. When a great one takes a wandering soul under his wing, his grace is not confined only to his immediate disciple, but radiates to those near and dear to him. Such powerful spiritual influence fell upon Elahi Baksh's family that in spite of their Muslim relations and brothers' taunts and scorn, many of its members sought instruction at Babaji's feet. Elahi's son-in-law, Hussain Baksh, was among the first to take to the path. He was very devoted to Babaji and displayed great love and reverence. His guru was pleased with him and treated him and his sons, Ghulam Qadir and Chirag Din, with affection. Mian Chirag Din, in his manuscript account, relates how the Great One would joke with them and receive them at all hours when they were youngsters. Once when he had gone to Guman and was resting, the boys sought him out there. Bibi Daya received them at the door, and when she learned that they had come for her son, she got a little irritated. "Ah, when you grow up," she exclaimed, "and have children of your own, never make the mistake of educating them. I am a mother, and I know too well from my experience how difficult it is to cope with when a son becomes a god." Babaji at this juncture called out from within, and the boys went in. He patted them fondly and remarked, "You are always welcome. Do not mind what mother says." A true master is ever with his disciple and protects him not only in life, but equally in death. O Nanak, free yourself from worldly companions and seek the friendship of a true saint. They shall forsake you even in life, but he shall not leave you even after death. Nanak, take hold, O soul, of one who knows all inner planes, for he shall befriend thee in life as well as in death. To witness the last moments of a disciple of Babaji was to be convinced of his genuine greatness. Countless stories are told of the strange happenings marking the end of those initiated by the Bees saint. We may quote the eyewitness account left by Chirag Din of his father's death as an outstanding example. We translate from his Urdu manuscript recording his family's contact with Babaji and some anecdotes he heard from the great master about his own early life. Once Babaji had gone to Guman after collecting his pension. Our father, meanwhile, had passed away. We went to the Great One and related to him the sad news. He consoled us and straightway proceeded to the spot where the dead body lay. On reaching there, he said, "O Hussain Baksh, why have you been in such haste? I would have come, and you could have had my darshan." As these words were uttered, our dead father opened his eyes and sat up. Our mother, frightened, inquired if anything was the matter. "Nothing," he said. "The master has come, and I am going." He then lay down and was gone. Another very interesting anecdote relates how, while Babaji was visiting the village of Daliwal, Atar Singh, a local inhabitant, carried him across a nearby seasonal stream swollen with recent rains and back again. The sage was so pleased with the Jat's selfless service that he declared, "O Atar, you have taken me across this little streamlet. I, in return, shall take you across the sea of life." He then initiated him into the divine science, and from that day the latter was a changed man. He would take his cattle for grazing as of yore, but on reaching the meadows he would let them go and himself got busy with his spiritual sadhana. He no longer used a stick to control his herd, but would manage it with a piece of cloth, and soon became known for his extraordinarily kind treatment of his animals. One day he returned rather early. On reaching home, he told his daughter-in-law, who was there, "Child, get everything done quickly. Storm will soon be here." He then went to take his bath, and on returning spread a bed on the floor and called all those in the house to his side. He bade them goodbye, explaining, "My time is drawing to a close, and I must soon be gone." Everyone was taken aback at these strange words. How could the speaker talk of dying when he was apparently in good health? At last his daughter-in-law, collecting herself, asked leave to send for his son. "There is no need," he answered. "My master has come, and I cannot keep him waiting." Saying these words, he lay down, closed his eyes, and his spirit left for its heavenly home. Babaji was not only chary himself of revealing his spiritual riches, but strictly enjoined his disciples to exercise the same restraint. When they transgressed his instructions, they never escaped chastisement. Thus, Chirag Din relates the story of a blind Hafiz, learned man, of Dariwal. He once attended a discourse of Babaji at the town of Kapurthala, and when it was over and they were talking to each other, the Hafiz remarked, "The wise have said that he who has read the holy book thrice attains heaven." "Heaven is very far, my dear fellow," replied Babaji. "Those that have entered it alone can tell." The assurance of the sage's voice moved the Hafiz to request instruction. His wish was granted, and he sedulously cultivated the lesson that had been given to him till it bore fruit. He then proceeded to Mian Sahib at Batala, his former teacher, and told him that all he had taught him was a hoax and a lie. He would often visit the mosque, and, intolerant of the pious sham practiced there, he would secretly break the earthen pots and burn the prayer mats. His fellows soon discovered the miscreant and complained to his guru. The blind man was called, and Babaji rebuked him. "Sir," replied his disciple, "I cannot stand hypocrisy, and besides, I am in the right." His master, however, told him that in the future he must learn to contain himself and exercise restraint. But the advice went unheeded, and the Hafiz soon began indulging his whim once again. A group of Muslims came to wait upon the sage and bitterly protested, complaining that he had taught his disciple to turn heathen. At this, Babaji answered, "Does the man still persist in his foolishness? Well, if he will not stop troubling you, do not be angry, for you will soon be rid of him." Sure enough, a few days later, the Hafiz passed away. Similar stories are told about other advanced disciples. A sadhu who came to live at Bees made rapid headway, and his soul would soar at will to Daswan Dwar. He, however, could not restrain himself and would begin talking of the inner glories to whoever would pass his way. Babaji was upset and told him that he must learn to discipline his tongue, but the sadhu, confident of himself, continued unheeding. The inner curtain was rung down, and for full 16 years he was denied inner access until his very last days, when Babaji's illustrious successor, Baba Sawan Singh, gave him his blessings. Baba Nizam-ud-Din, in a like situation, was to experience a similar check. His son, in a beautifully written Urdu account, narrates how his father, who was the 16th initiate of Babaji according to the records at Bees, made very speedy inner progress. In a few months he had gained great powers and had developed a remarkable clairvoyance. But instead of locking his gifts within himself as taught by his teacher, he began displaying his spiritual wares and would freely tell those around of future happenings or of what was taking place at distant towns. When Babaji was told of this, he turned to Bibi Ruko and said, "This man has ascended very rapidly indeed, but has not been able to digest what he has got." From that day on, Nizam-ud-Din, who had failed to shutter his lips, found that his inner eye had been curtained. His sorrow was great, but trusting the grace of his master, he took to his spiritual practices with redoubled energy. His wife, too, got initiated, and with the passage of time, great blessings were bestowed upon them, and it was evident to those who came into contact with them that they were no ordinary mortals. But never again did Nizam-ud-Din flaunt his spiritual powers. The entire life of Baba Nizam-ud-Din and his family, as written by his son, is one long saga of the blessings of having a true master. But society is not kind to a living saint, nor to those that are lost in his love. Nizam-ud-Din's devotion to his Sikh peer soon won him the animosity of his relatives and Muslim brethren. He has turned kafir, they said, and lost no opportunity of abusing and persecuting him. He himself was not to be deterred, and whenever there was any talk of Muslim and non-Muslim, he would recite the Persian couplets. Ishq ra ba kafir o moman, nabashad imtiaj ein sukan bar mambar o merab, mai bayad nivisht. Love makes no distinction between the infidel and the faithful. Let these words be written on every pulpit and arch. Made Huji, Made Haji, Ratalab, Ka Hindu, Ka Turk or Ka Arab. If you wish to go on the inner pilgrimage, then seek an inner guide, be he a Hindu, a Turk, or an Arab. But for all his patience, matters grew only worse, and when things were not to be borne any longer, Babaji advised his beloved disciple to shift his hearth and home to Multan. It was there that he spent the rest of his long life and would often go to Bees to meet his master. When after 1903 he was no more, he would visit Baba Sawan Singh, his spiritual successor, who held him in great esteem. It is not for us to dwell at length on the many blessings bestowed upon him, his sons, grandsons, and great-grandsons. Suffice it to say that the whole family held Babaji in great reverence and, as enjoined by him, kept up all the traditions of their faith while practicing the discipline he had taught. When his wife passed away, she foretold her approaching end a month before the date, at which time she was in good health. When her hour drew near, she took touching leave of her husband. "I have served you to the best of my ability for 60 years. Now grant me leave for going away. My master and Maharaj Sawan Singh are waiting for me." Nizam-ud-Din asked her to hold his arm and focused his attention inwards. The whole family was looking on as the old couple sat wrapped in meditation. 20 minutes later, the husband opened his eyes. "Now you may go," he said, and his wife peacefully passed away. Next morning, when her hearse had to be carried to the burial grounds, some of the relations refused to lift the bier on the grounds that the lady was a kafir, heretic. But the neighbors knew her to be kind and generous and a true daughter of God, and helped to carry the coffin to the graveyard. Baba Nizam-ud-Din did not tarry long after. His end was similarly known before it came, and when his bier was to be carried, his brethren's hearts had been softened, and they joined the procession. Many a fakir and sadhu witnessed his burial, and as his remains were being lowered, the verse was chanted, Hum nashini sat eba aulia, behter asad sala tat beria. A moment's contact with a saint is worth more than 1,000,000 austerities. Even to this day, in spite of the division of the country, India, that came with independence, and in spite of the communal hatreds unleashed in its wake, the descendants of Baba Nizam-ud-Din have kept up the faith and often visit Sawan Ashram at Delhi to keep alive their association with the path of the masters, or the Sultan-ul-Azkar, as their enlightened forefather called it in the terminology of the Sufi fakirs. Babaji's grace flowed to all. It was not only his disciples who benefited from him, but many others who merely happened to catch his eye by their simplicity, purity, and selfless service. He had read many a scripture in his childhood and youth, but he spoke not from learning, but from direct inner experience. There was inexplicable sweetness and charm in what he said, and an irresistible sense of conviction and assurance. Once, 4 great pundits who dabbled in various yogic practices began wrangling and debating about the nature of the inner planes. They based themselves on their spiritual study, and the controversy they waged was lively indeed. Hearing of a Jat saint of great attainment, they came to Babaji's door. He heard what they had to say, and then lucidly explained to them the nature of the spiritual regions, reconciling what had appeared to be contradictory viewpoints and resolving all their doubts to their satisfaction. The pundits went away, but one of them, a true seeker who had caught the saint's bait, returned and begged for initiation. The boon was granted. He practiced his sadhana with regularity, but to little avail. "Ah, sir, bless me with some inner vision," he begged. "Do you think I do not wish you well?" came the reply. "I wish to the Lord that you reach Satlok this day, but you are not yet ripe, and would not be able to bear the strain." The prayer was repeated many a time, but Babaji always gave the same answer. One day, while he was going alone to collect his pension, the pundit met him at a lonely spot. "Sir, this is wilderness, and no one is by. Bless me now, at least give me a glimpse of the realms within no more, that I may rest in certainty." You will not be able to stand it, and the strain will be too much for you. What does it matter, even if I lose my life, if only I may see what is within? Babaji could refuse no longer. He asked the pundit to sit down in meditation and focused his gaze upon him. The pundit's soul was forcibly drawn up into the higher realms. When Babaji, by his own will, brought it down to physical consciousness, the pundit fell sobbing at his feet. I thought my life was being wrenched out of me, and a million lightnings fell upon my head. Oh, sir, forgive me my foolishness. We mortals are indeed unworthy. What is there to forgive? Replied the sage. It is you who must forgive yourself for it, is not I who suffered. Now go and make the most of your time, for you have only 3 more years to live. From that day onward, the pundit concentrated on his meditations, and 3 years later, as predicted, he passed away. Such tales are, however, legion, and whole volumes would not suffice to sing the glory and grace of a true saint. So passing them by, we will concern ourselves with the most important single event in the annals of Babaji's divine ministry, the initiation of Sant Singh Ji, who was later to carry on Babaji's mission. The story is told by the great disciple himself, and we quote from his letters which have been published in Spiritual Gems, B's, 1959. I was fond of satsang and paramath, spirituality, from my very childhood. I often associated with sadhus and religious people, and this in part was because my father was fond of sadhu seva, service. Then, while in military service, I studied Vedanta and discussed Vedanta with people, especially with the sadhus who on their way to Kashmir stayed at a dharamsala, rest house, near my house. Later, I was transferred to Murray Hills. One day, as I was supervising my work, I saw an old Sikh going up a hill along with a middle-aged lady. When I noticed him, I thought he had probably come in connection with some case in the Commissioner's Court. Little did I think that he was to be my master. He was no other than Babaji himself, and the lady was Bibi Ruko. This I did not know at the time, but found out later that Babaji said to Bibi Ruko, referring to me, "It is for his sake that we have come here," to which Bibi Ruko replied, "But he has not even greeted you." Babaji said to her, "What does the poor fellow know yet? On the 4th day from this, he will come to us." On the 4th day, I went to attend satsang. Babaji was at that time explaining the meaning of the Japji Sahib. Well, I started my volley of questions, so much so that the audience got tired and began to feel restless at the large number of questions I had put. The sacred book, Sarbachan, was lying there, and I objected to the name of Radhasoami, and Babaji explained from the book itself what Radhasoami meant. Radha ad Surat Kanam, Swami ad Shabd Nijdam. Radha is the name of the first or primal ray of Surat, consciousness. Soami is the original source of the stream of Shabd Nam or word. Now he wanted to point out the way, but I had read Vedanta. When I read Gurbani, my opinion was different. When I read the Gita, my opinion was again different, and I was unable to come to a decision. At last, I applied for 8 days' leave to enable me to study the teachings of Babaji. He advised me to read Kabir Sahib's Anurag Saga. I immediately ordered 8 copies of this book from Bombay so that I could also give some to my friends, Baba Hari Ram, Gulab Singh, etc., to read and comment on it. After several conferences with Babaji, I was thoroughly convinced and received initiation from him on the 15th day of October in 1894. What follows is a moving tale of devotion and obedience on the one hand, and ineffable love and grace on the other. The letters exchanged between the master and the disciple catch something of the esoteric beauty of this tale, and Babaji's epistles are reproduced in the already mentioned volume of Spiritual Gems. In these, we learn of the step-by-step guidance afforded by the Guru to the disciple who has surrendered himself completely to his will, and the bizarre and miraculous way in which his protective hand helps him at every turn. There were 2 particular incidents that Baba Sant Singh was particularly fond of relating to his audiences to exemplify the greatness of Babaji and the blessing of having a Puran guru or true master. We quote again from his letters. It was my habit to catch hold of the mane of my horse and jump upon it while it was going by. But my servant, in my absence and without my knowledge, had cut the horse's mane. I did not notice that, and as I grabbed for the mane, my hand slipped and I fell down and broke my leg. The fracture was painful, no doubt, but much more painful was the fact that I could neither defecate nor urinate. The doctors even thought it might be difficult for me to survive. A Mohammedan overseer belonging to my district, coming to know of this accident, came to me and said, "I am your own man, a sort of family member. I belong to your place. Tell me, please, how can I help you?" I said, "My children are studying as boarders in a school about 8 miles from this place. I do not want them to know of this accident, but I should like you to send a telegram to Maharaj Ji, Babaji." He sent the telegram, and when Babaji received the telegram, he said, "Well, if the master wants to take him away, he may, for at least he has got Naam." But my sister in faith, Bibi Ruko, pleaded for me with Babaji. It was Babaji's practice to sit in meditation or to go into meditation when there was expectation of anything important happening, and then to give out whatever information he received within. He sat in meditation at 8 p.m. or earlier whenever the information was received by telegram. At about 3 a.m. he called Bibi Ruko and she asked, "Shall I bring your food now?" He had not taken his evening meal. Babaji replied, "No, but you asked something about Bhai Sawan Singh. Now you can inform Sawan Singh that he is not going, but the karmas were very heavy. It was ordained that he had to suffer for 5 years, but now we will settle the karmas in 5 months. Is it not something? We shall not go to him just now, but after he has been discharged from the hospital. In the meantime, you may acknowledge receipt of his telegram." And the moment Babaji's telegram was received, I could pass stools and urine. Saints show their mercy, but they never talk about it. Now, while I was reduced to this condition, I had to suffer from the monetary point of view also. I lost my subdivisional allowance, my horse allowance, and half my pay also. The chief engineer was very kind to me. He said, "If only you could come to office every day in a dandy, sedan chair, I would consider you on duty." But I was very doubtful and feared that my leg being still weak, I might slip and have another accident. The chief engineer thereupon allowed me 1 month's leave. I wondered if I would be fit to work after 1 month. The next morning I saw the commanding engineer, and he said, "Now you are going for only 1 month." Prior to this, Babaji came to see me and told me that I would be absent from duty for only 1 more month, but it was hard for me to believe it. At last, the month passed, and a letter was received from Babaji stating, "We people have not come into this world to do our own work. We have come here by the orders of Maharaj Ji, Swami Ji. If he likes, he will get the work out of us. It is impossible to describe the reach or the power of the saints. I am sure if the Guru wants, he can make even the stones carry out his work." Babaji used to be very kind to me, and whenever I came to visit him, he would give me a place in his own room. Once I got down from the Bees railway station at 12 o'clock at noon. It was very hot, and I sat down under a tree for a while. Then I felt that I had come for Babaji's darshan, yet here I was seeking comfort and delaying that meeting with the beloved. Even worldly lovers have done much better. The thought troubled me, so I started on foot from the station to the Dera colony. At the Dera, Babaji Maharaj, who was very sensitive to heat, came out and began to pace the open courtyard before his room. Bibi Ruko remonstrated and requested him to go inside his room, out of the hot sun, but he would not. A few minutes before I reached the Dera, he went in, and then Bibi Ruko, seeing me coming, exclaimed, "Oh, now I see why Babaji was walking in the hot sun. He had himself absorbed some of that extreme heat so that I would not be overcome by it on the way. There are so many wonderful things about Babaji that if I go on relating them for 100 years, it would not be possible to finish them all. Indeed, 100 years would not suffice, and we will cover as swiftly as possible the rest of the story of Babaji's earthly sojourn. Side note: Chacha Partap. Singh's letter dated the 4th of August, 1902. Beloved of the Satguru, purified by Shabd, pure of face and intellect, Baba Jaimal Singh Ji. I have received your letter and was very glad to read its contents, and the stone which you suggested will be put in the building, you may be assured about that. My son, Suchet Singh, has come back on pension. I am, however, sorry to note that there is a tendency of forming different sects and cliques in our satsang, and that all satsangis are not in harmony with each other. For this purpose, I have come here, to Allahabad. We have decided that a Radha Swami Satsang Central Association should be started. Pandit Ji, Brahm Shankar Misra, has insisted that I should be its president, and he will be the vice president, that Lala Ajodia Parshad, son of Hazur Sahib Maharaj, Rai Bahadur Saligram, and 8 others, as well as yourself, should be members. Or, in whatever manner, any 10 members can be selected by the satsangis by a vote of majority. I am, therefore, sending you a pamphlet containing a complete description about this central association, and can send you any number of copies as may be required. Please send instructions to all your satsangis that they should sanction the following 10 names and endorse these pamphlets in token of their nomination. If you have satsangis in far-off places, they should also be asked to act accordingly. I am giving below the names of the 10 members above. 1. Lala Ajodhya Parshad, son of Rai Bahadur Saligram. 2. Pandit Brahm Shankar Misra Sahib. 3. Lala Baleshwar Parshad. 4. Lala Madho Parshad. 5. Rai Ishwar Sahai alias Raja Sahib. 6. Lala Suchet Singh, son of Seth Partap Singh Ji Maharaj. 7. Baba Jaimal Singh Ji Sahib. 8. Lala Sudarshan Singh, another son of Seth Partap Singh Ji. 9. Munshi Hargo bin Daya Sahib. 10. Mr. Bul Chand Sahib. It is expected that by the constitution of this society, different groups and cliques will disappear, and satsangis will love each other as brothers. Kindly send this letter to Babu Sawan Singh also for his information. An ever-increasing number of visitors flock to his hut at Bees, and his words to Bibi Ruko. Here shall rise one day an ever-growing city, and many a house and bungalow shall be built. And no less the words of God-intoxicated Kahan, at whom the people had laughed. I collect these bricks for the town that shall here be built began at last to seem meaningful. Babaji spent the greater part of his time at Bees, but often went on tour to neighboring areas or to towns farther off to minister to the spiritual needs of his votaries. Once, when he was at Ambala, at the behest of some disciples, Hukam Singh, a friend of his devoted disciple Moti Ram, a tailor who worked for the British regiment stationed there, applied for initiation. Babaji refused to grant his request. Hukam Singh approached his friend, who in turn approached Babaji, but to no avail. He is not yet fit for the path, the sage observed, but Moti Ram was not to be put off. He pleaded again and again for the case of his friend. I have told you before, his karmas don't permit it. So what can I do in the matter? Holy One, all the more reason you should take pity on him, for if you don't, then who will? Moti Ram, do not press me further. I would rather initiate 400 others than this friend of yours. A saint cannot refuse a devoted disciple for long, and would even pass through fire for his sake. When Moti Ram repeatedly pressed, he gave way, adding, But as soon as I have initiated your friend, I shall not spend another moment here, but proceed straight home. True to his word, Babaji, as soon as the instructions were over, packed his scanty belongings and entrained for Bees. Whoever expressed a desire to follow him, there was told to come 2 weeks later. On reaching his hut, Babaji lay down in bed, and when local visitors came to see him, they were in consternation, for they found him in the grip of a deadly fever. Doctors and medicines were sent for, but Babaji would take nothing. About a fortnight later, the fever subsided, and when Moti Ram received the news, he hastened to see him and begged forgiveness. "Sir, if only I had known what it was to mean for you, I would not, for the kingdom of 3 worlds, have pressed to initiate my friend." Babaji was in a communicative mood and revealed, so heavy were the karmas of Hukam Singh that but for the intercession he would, for the next 7 lives, have passed through the most trying sufferings and ordeals. Moti Ram humbly thanked him for his unfathomable grace, but Babaji, true to his innate humility, simply replied, "Such was the will of the Lord." The grace of Babaji radiated like the life-giving sun to those that came in touch with him. Baba Sawan Singh, however, as we have already seen, was the object of his special adoration. The years from 1894 to 1903 were marked by regular visits to Bees by Baba Sawan Singh Ji Maharaj, which were occasionally returned by Babaji. The sage called his favorite disciple by the name of Babuji. He had told Bibi Ruko that the handsome government officer would one day be his successor. On one occasion, while in an extraordinarily gracious mood, he turned to his Gurumukh and remarked, "You and I have come for the good of mankind." Sawan Singh replied, "You, of course, have come for humanity's uplift, but I myself am only an erring mortal." Babaji repeated what he had said, and Sawan Singh made the same reply. Babaji then, raising his eyebrows, said in a louder tone, "Babuji, I am speaking to you. We both have come for the good of mankind." Sawan Singh sat mute and silent. At another time, the bee saint told his disciples, "I have had to toil very hard for my attainment, yet have kept my treasures locked and have never displayed them. But my labours shall bear fruit, and he who shall inherit my mantle shall be known far and wide." The days passed by, and Bays became a luminous centre on the spiritual map of the world. He, who had never agreed to the building of halls and houses, at the instance of his beloved Babuji, finally relented, and a well was sunk and a satsang hall built during his last years. "Why erect any buildings here when the river may wash them off?" he had protested, but Sawan Singh was not to be dissuaded. "Even if you can deliver a single discourse and the structure collapses immediately after, I will consider my labours richly rewarded." Meanwhile, the last days of the Jat Guru, as he humorously styled himself, were drawing to a close. 6 months before his death, he had told his disciples of the approaching end. On hearing of the passing away of Karam Singh of Attock, he had remarked, "I used to meet him at Delhi. A great soul indeed. But he will have to be born once again for full liberation, not having practiced Naam in this life. Well, well, my work is also drawing to a close, and I, too, shall soon be gone." The last days saw many pilgrims at Bees. The sage, who once had passed both night and day lost in meditation, was now day and night in the service of his devotees. He would hardly rest for 3 or 4 hours, spending the rest of the day in meeting those who sought him out, attending to their problems and goading them to greater and even greater spiritual effort. The gates of divine grace were flung open, and those that sat by him in his room during the days immediately preceding his departure would be inwardly buoyed up and wrapped in samadhi. The construction of the satsang hall had by now been completed, and everyone pressed Babaji to deliver a discourse. He, however, remonstrated. "No, no, the will of God is otherwise. He who is to succeed me shall address you there." Bibi Ruko was equally adamant. "We shall of course hear him when his time comes, but now, while you are here, let us have the benefit of your presence." But Babaji insisted, "The will of God is otherwise. Besides, I wish Babuji to discourse to all present during my own lifetime, so that there should be no disputes later." But the audience had gathered and pleaded that he himself should speak. Bibi Ruko begged and implored, and he at last moved forward. But after climbing a step or two, he once again stopped and repeated what he had said. To the amazement of all who entered the satsang hall, Babaji's Gurumukh son, Hazur Sawan Singh Ji, was seen sitting at the dais platform. The last day finally arrived. All the close disciples stood by in anxious expectation. It was the 29th of December, 1903, and a cold and piercing breeze blew over from the waters of the Bees. Babaji seemed to be waiting and cast restless glances at the door. At last, a police officer arrived and sought for initiation. "It is for you I have been waiting," replied the great saint, and without further ado began explaining the theory and practice of the Surat Shabd Yoga. Soon after the instructions were over, he lay down and, closing his eyes, cast off this muddy vesture of decay. Thus passed away one of the greatest of modern saints, whose life was a lesson in humility and love. He had studied at no schools or universities, but had delved deep into the book of life. He had read as a child the scriptures of many a faith, and had early practiced many sadhana or spiritual exercises. By the age of 18, when other men have hardly attained mental maturity, he had already won the crown of life denied to the most rigorous of yogis and the most industrious of learned men. And yet the rest of his years were passed in the most perfect humility, his only ambition being to serve his master and carry his message as best as he could. In his last recorded words, he is reported to have said, "All my life I have sought only to serve my master, and now whatever work he had to accomplish through this poor physical frame is over," and his very last hour was spent in this service. Baba Jaimal Singh Ji more than exemplified what he had once written to his future successor. Saints are born not for themselves, but for the liberation of mankind. He spoke from inner experience and not from books, and he initiated about 3,000 souls, while the number of those who unconsciously benefited by his influence is beyond enumeration. Could one discover another so selfless, so ready to suffer vicariously for the sins of others, so boundless in his love, and so unconcerned with outer differences of sects and creeds? If one searched one's memory, there was perhaps one name that came most readily to mind, that of Nanak. And was it a mere coincidence that the soldier saint of Bees was born in the very district, Gurdaspur, in which the great medieval saint, according to his constant companion and biographer Bhai Bala, had prophesied he would reappear in some future age in a Jat home? Babaji's disciples did not fail to note the resemblance even during his lifetime, and once questioned him on the subject. The sage smiled mysteriously and dismissed the question, but a few minutes later he casually remarked, "If we spirits were to speak our minds, who would allow us a moment's rest, and who would spare our skins?"